recording has started, and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Lois. I am a registered dietitian for over 35 years and a diabetes care and education specialist for over 25 years. So that's just a little bit about my background. Our topic for today is discovering your diet personality, what your food choices say about you. Have you ever stopped to consider why you crave certain foods or have specific eating habits or patterns? The foods you choose to eat can reveal a lot about your personality and mindset. Some people choose to be strict vegans, while others can resist a juicy steak. Some are always snacking on sugary treats, while others prefer a more balanced, whole foods approach to eating. The foods we eat can have a significant impact not just on our physical health, but also on our mental and emotional well being. So, one way foods can impact our personalities is through its effect on our mood. Understanding your diet personality can empower you to make healthier choices to reap positive impact on your health and mood and create a happy and balanced relationship with food. Our food choices are primarily not just driven by physiological needs, but they are also impacted by psychological factors, by our individual preferences and beliefs. Let's start with physiological needs. Another word for that is called stomach hunger. In this instance, we approach food as fuel to fuel our bodies for the day. Incorporating a whole foods balanced diet that incorporates whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean protein, and healthy fats helps us to get energy for the day, helps us with satiety, with strength, with endurance, and mood and cognition. So that's where we use food to meet those physiological needs. Psychological factors, another word for that would be more like mouth hunger, where our food choices are driven by our emotions. Uh, when we're upset or when we're lonely, when we're bored, sad, we have the blues, we can make food choices that are more like comfort foods, and those tend to be high in salt and sugar and fats. Another way by which our food choices can be affected is our individual preferences. Um, some of these can be our personality or our nature. Those who are disciplined, organized, they prefer a more a way to look at it to see how what food should I plan for. They tend to be more disciplined. They're counting their calories. They're paying attention to what they eat. So they tend to be more disciplined and organized and plan their meals. And so that can be determined by the food choices that they make can be determined by their preferences. Some others could be very spontaneous, and so um, they just snack on foods, and it's based on their mood. They may, uh, snack throughout the day. So their preferences are more reflecting of their personality. Sometimes it could be culture that can drive our choices. There are some cultures who focus so much on food and they grow up around food, especially countries like Italy and Spain. They derive a lot of pleasure around cooking, and they try different adventurous foods and try different ways of cooking. while there are other cultures where food might be a scarcity, and so they're very careful about wasting food. So they're more looking at affordable options, and so they might be more careful and balanced around what to purchase, and so their food choices can be more derived by um, the culture and the environment that they grew in. So you can see how our food choices are driven by several factors. So, what is the relationship of our food choices and our eating habits on mental health? We know how it affects us physically, but how does it affect our mental health and our mood and cognition? So, food and mood do have an effect on each other. We sometimes use food to deal with stress, which we call stress related eating, or we have the blues and choose comfort foods to help us deal with that. So, when we're dealing with comfort foods, those tend to be high in sugar, salt, and fat. And what happens is those kinds of foods can increase our risk for mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. So then what happens is it becomes a vicious cycle where we're sad or we're upset and we turn to food, and then we eat those comfort foods and don't feel good. And so it becomes a vicious cycle. So that's how food can affect our mood. Um, the Mediterranean diet has been linked to a lower risk of depression and is considered a mood stabilizer. So you can see how foods can have an impact on your mood. In one study that was done, people who ate 8 servings of fruits and vegetables, uh, it was reported that they had higher levels of happiness. Low omega-3 levels has been correlated with depression and impulsiveness. Chocolate, especially dark chocolate, has been linked with improved mood and decreased tension. But it's important to pay attention to the portions as well. So you can see how um, you know different foods and the choices we make do have an impact on our mental health. And some of the things that can affect our mood is what is listed here. When we're inadequate in certain nutrients, um, that can affect our mental health and our mood and cognition. Um, I'm sure you've heard about this gut brain axis or gut brain connection. Inflammation has been linked to mental health, and even blood sugar regulation has been linked to mental health. Let's look at the first one, which is nutrient inadequacy. So, there are certain micronutrients such as folate, zinc, magnesium, selenium, iron, vitamin D. These micronutrients, they do protect against anxiety. They protect against mood swings and irritability. B vitamins are essential cofactors for synthesis of happy hormones called the neurotransmitters, especially for neurotransmitters that regulate our mood. And those are serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and noradrenaline. So these are neurotransmitters that are linked with food. And so certain foods are necessary for these neurotransmitters to work properly. Choline is another micronutrient that has been shown to help with mood and memory. And where do you find choline? In eggs, beef, fish, chicken, dairy, and beans. So you can see how when your diet is missing some of these nutrients, then they can have an impact on mental health. The next factor is called the gut brain connection. So, the gut lining regulates the absorption of nutrients, electrolytes, water from the gut, and also prevents the entry of pathogens or disease causing agents. The good bacteria protects the gut lining. It helps improve the nutrients to be absorbed efficiently. And it also has a two-way signaling with the brain, which modulates the processes that regulate emotion in the human brain. So you can see how there is a connection between the gut and the brain to communicate with each other. Um, Serotonin, which I talked about earlier, it's the happy hormone that helps regulate the mood, sleep, appetite, and also inhibits pain, is produced mostly in your gut. So, all of this is influenced by good bacteria in your gut. So, our gut lining has good bacteria and bad bacteria. And it's important that we have more of the good bacteria because that's what helps with good health. The things that harm gut health are things like stress, inflammation, antibiotics, alcohol, fast foods, ultra processed foods can cause the imbalance in the good and bad bacteria. We want more of the good bacteria, but when you have these things in place, such as stress or antibiotics or alcohol, it affects the balance of the good and bad bacteria. And so you may tend to have more bad bacteria in, um, compared to the good bacteria. It can also cause less diversity of bacteria, and it can increase the permeability of of the gut barrier. So what happens is that can cause the bad bacteria to migrate from the gut instead of staying in the gut, and then that activates the immune system, which can then affect the functioning of the nervous system, the endocrine system, the immune system, which then affects the mental health. So it's important that there's a good balance of good and bad bacteria, and you want things that promote good bacteria in the gut, and that would be primarily prebiotics and probiotics. They're the ones that promote good bacteria in the gut. The factors like stress, inflammation, antibiotics, ultra processed foods, and fast foods, they have a negative impact on the good bacteria and promote more of the bad bacteria. So it's important to understand that there is a gut and brain connection that can influence mental health. How does inflammation affect mental health? When your diet is high in refined sugars, um, those are more like the processed foods, ultra processed foods, they promote inflammation, and they promote something called oxidative stress, which is when your body uses oxygen and creates waste of free radicals, which damage cells. So the good bacteria influences the degree of inflammation throughout the body. Omega 3 fats have anti inflammatory effects on the body by reducing the inflammation associated with the brain, such as depression and Alzheimer's. The Mediterranean diet has been found to be anti inflammatory because it incorporates a lot of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, which nourish the brain and slow down cognitive decline, especially in the elderly population. How does blood sugars affect mental health? Well, when your diet is high in refined sugars or refined carbohydrates, and you're eating foods and drinks that are high in added sugars, they can cause profound highs and lows in the blood sugars, which can lead to irritability, lack of concentration, weakness, mood swings. These sharp rises in blood sugars can trigger release of the stress hormone called cortisol. Unprocessed whole grains and foods high in natural sugar like fruits, vegetables, low fat dairy, in combination with lean protein and healthy fats throughout the day, causes the blood sugars to rise gradually and fall gradually. So it creates more of a stable blood sugar profile versus peaks in your blood sugar and less mood disturbances. Along with blood sugar, how that impacts mental health, hydration also affects mental health. Hydration impacts cognition, impacts concentration. Our body is 60 to 75% fluid, so it's necessary for all the body functions and pathways. It impacts our mood, our alertness. So even when there's mild dehydration, it affects our alertness. Dehydration can also affect performance, it can cause heat stress. So, being well hydrated has a relationship with mental health and mood and cognition and regulating our mental health. Excessive alcohol and caffeine intake, they affect concentration. They can cause headache, irritability, fatigue. And you see all these, especially when you withdraw from it. So you can see how fluids also have a direct relationship with mental health. So, in conclusion, paying attention to your eating habits can impact not just your physical health, but it can also affect your mental health as well. So, with that, I want to take us to the next slide, which is looking at your eating habits. Dr. Robert Kushner, who's one of the weight management experts in the field, he came up with this quiz that helps you to identify what is your eating pattern, so that way you're able to see what eating habits are helpful to your mental and physical health, and what eating habits or food choices may be harmful to your health. So what I want you to do is read over these 7 eating patterns. You'll see 7 listed here. The first one is a meal skipper. The second is a nighttime nibbler. The third is a convenient diner. The fourth is a fruitless feaster. The fifth one is a steady snacker. The sixth is a hearty portioner. And the seventh is a swing eater. If a pattern seems to describe you, put a check in the yes box. When you finish, look at the quiz. And if you checked yes for more than one eating pattern, put a star by the 2 patterns that you think best describes you. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to take this quiz so you can identify what is your eating pattern. I hope most of you have taken this quiz. So we'll go ahead and look at each eating pattern. So let's start with the meal skipper. The meal skipper is someone who does not plan their meals or eat on a set schedule. Um, what are some tips that can help someone who's a meal skipper? By prioritizing their meals and planning a well rounded breakfast daily, can help prevent skipping the meals. It's very important to start the first meal of the day rather than skipping it, because you're waking up with a tank that's already empty, and that's harder to regulate blood sugars, and it can impact your mood that we just heard about. So it's very important to not skip the first meal of the day. Research has found that when people skip breakfast, they have a hard time regulating their blood sugars the rest of the day. So you always want to plan a well-rounded breakfast. And what does a well-rounded breakfast mean? You want to have at least 3 to 4 food groups represented on your plate, some kind of healthy grains, fruits, and vegetables. Some people don't like to incorporate vegetables, but a good way to incorporate vegetables at breakfast can be adding it to your protein through eggs. So you want to try to get at least 3 to 4 food groups represented at the breakfast plate. If you're in the habit of skipping meals, set aside time each week, preferably on the days that you're off, to create a meal plan and create a grocery list and prepare meals in advance. Um, uh, if you uh, if you don't have time to get a meal in because of meetings or errands, then keep healthy snacks high in fiber and protein readily available, so that when you finally sit down to eat, you're not starving and famished and have a harder time controlling your portions and the choices that you make. So these are some tips for the meal skippers. The next eating pattern is the nighttime nibbler. So, the nighttime nibbler is someone who eats very little during the day and eats most of meals and snacks starting from dinner and beyond. So, what you want to, uh, uh, some helpful tips for the nighttime nibbler is to find out what are the triggers that trigger you from um, eating more during the day. Is it, busy schedule, or feelings get involved? You're not so much of a person who likes to eat well during the day. You tend to eat more at night. Identifying triggers, establishing a regular eating schedule with well balanced meals versus, having most of your meals at night. You have to think about, most of the time we're parking our bodies for the night. And so our body is getting prepared for rest and not to burn all that fuel from food at nighttime when we're getting ready for bed. So we want to fuel well during the day. And so you want to establish a regular eating schedule. Um, Distract yourself, from, um, you know, sometimes you're sitting in front of the TV, or, there are other screen like your cell phone. And so you're not paying attention to, eating. Look at, what are some things that's causing you to reach for, nighttime nibbling. So look at things that distract you. Practice mindful eating. Um, focus on your pace of eating. Focus on the smells, the aroma, paying attention to how quickly you eat. Those are all ways by which you can practice mindful eating. Sometimes stress can be a reason why you're nibbling more often at night. So you want to look at non-stress, non-food related, sorry, non-food related ways to deal with stress, so that food doesn't become your coping mechanism for stress. And then sometimes we're not hydrated and we confuse our thirst signals for hunger. So it's very important to make sure you're well hydrated and not confusing that with hunger. So those are some tips for the nighttime nibbler. Convenient diner. These are people who eat foods that are convenient, ready made, frozen, or packaged meals or microwavable. Um, they're usually ordering out or eating out. So, those are some of the eating patterns that are recognized by someone who's a convenient diner. And some helpful tips for someone who's a convenient diner is look at food labels. Sometimes these convenient, ready-made, frozen and packaged foods can be high in salt and can be high in sugar and fat, and not have enough of the healthy nutrients in it. So you want to be an informed consumer and look at the food labels when you're choosing some of these ready-made kind of foods. Try to choose foods that are whole, that has three or four of the food groups in it, such as fruits, or sorry, not fruits, vegetables and whole grains and protein. So you want to have more of the food groups represented versus just meat and potatoes. You also want to see if you can add some fresh produce, like when you have a packaged meal, add some vegetables to the plate or a salad or add a fruit. So adding more fresh produce will help balance out some of the sodium in these packaged foods. Definitely pay attention to the portions, because sometimes the portions can be pretty large. So you can maybe split it in half and add some salads and fruit to round out the meal. The other tip could be opt for meals that include a variety of the food groups. And we already addressed that when we talked about choosing whole foods. The next eating pattern is the fruitless feaster. This is someone who, does not eat enough fruits and vegetables in their diet. And, how do we get them to start eating more fruits and vegetables? One way is by exploring different ways to cook vegetables. You could roast them, you could air fry them, you could, stir fry. So look at different ways to cook your vegetables to incorporate vegetables or even fruits. You can incorporate them in your dishes. You can add herbs and spices to flavor your vegetables. Try different varieties of there's so many different varieties of fruits and vegetables, and so try different varieties and gradually introduce them into your diet. You have the rest of your life to add more fruits and vegetables, so start with one or two fruits or vegetables and gradually make sure that half your plate incorporates vegetable and fruits. The next is a steady snacker. And this is someone who mindlessly snacks on foods throughout the day, whether they are hungry or not. And this is what I had talked earlier about stomach hunger versus mouth hunger. They're not truly stomach hungry, they're just eating out of emotions. And so you want to be able to identify what triggers you to, you know, go towards, the emotional eating. Sometimes keeping a food journal can help you to identify the relationship of your emotions and the foods you eat. Have a structured eating routine. Usually when you skip meals, or when you don't have a structure to your meal plans, then that can cause you to be snacking all day. So have a structured eating routine. Again, practice mindful eating, paying attention to what's on your plate, what's triggering your eating habits. Is it mouth hunger or is it stomach hunger? Making sure you're well hydrated. Um, Finding alternative activities in place of food, such as going for a walk or talking to someone or listening to music. You're looking for other ways to deal with emotions or stress versus turning to food. But if all else fails, then at least keeping healthy snacks around, so then that way it doesn't uh, affect your health in a negative way. The next eating pattern is the hardy portioner. This is someone who has a hard time with portion control. And so, some tips for someone who struggles with portions is, you know, using smaller plates and bowls, um, measuring out your portions, pre portioning your meals, paying attention to hunger and fullness cues. When you skip meals, you tend to be famished, and then it's hard to, um, slow down your eating. So you want to, when you sit down to eat, you want to pay attention to how hungry you are. You should just be starting to get not hungry and not famished, because when you're famished, then it's hard to slow your pace of eating. What also happens is, you're not able to understand when you start to feel full. And so you may eat too fast and not recognize when you're starting to feel full. So, for someone who has difficulty with portion control, it's very important before you sit down to eat to journal what's your hunger level, and also to recognize when you start to feel full. So, slow down, savor your meals, keep tempting foods out of sight. If you have, difficulty with certain foods, out of sight, out of mind might be something that could help. Plan and track your meals. That's a good way to help with portion control. And then again, stay hydrated. So the next pattern is the swing eater. What is the swing eater? That's someone who swings between eating good foods in public and overeating bad foods in private. And this never um, keeps them satisfied. They're always dealing with the feelings of guilt. And so, some helpful tips for the person who's a swing eater is to be compassionate to yourself. Practice self compassion. Don't judge yourself too harshly. Reflect on what triggers you to, eat some of the foods that may not be the best choices in private. Is it related to emotional factors? Plan ahead. If you're going to go out to eat, know what's in the menu, so then you can plan to make healthier choices. Focus on the big picture. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate progress. If you find, I ate well during the day, I got enough fruits and vegetables, that one meal shouldn't make you feel guilty. So look at progresses you've made when it comes to your eating habits and celebrate it. build a supportive network, have an accountability partner that will help support you, look at healthier alternatives. So that way, when you have something that um, may not be the best choice, you're looking at the whole picture and having a good relationship with food. So, some diet recommendations for supporting mental well being is eating a well balanced diet that incorporates unprocessed whole grains, fruits and vegetables, lean protein, low fat dairy, um, healthy fats. Those are all the foods that provide the nutrients that help support mood and cognition and mental health. Especially focus on omega-3 food sources, as we uh, learned earlier that these definitely play a role on mental health. Incorporate antioxidants from food, primarily through whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. We talked about eating foods like prebiotics and probiotics to support a healthy gut, which is what helps with mental health, having more of the good bacteria. Limit processed and sugary foods that don't support a healthy gut, and stay well hydrated. So, those are some of my recommendations for supporting mental health and mood and cognition. Thank you. And that ends our session for today.
Lois, I think someone has. Thank you so much. First of all, now if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat right now. We will um, try to answer all of them.
Mhm.
But someone commented and said she missed what you said about the dark chocolate benefits. Could you repeat that?
So, dark chocolate has been found to positively impact the your mood. So, we're looking at foods and how it affects mental health, and we are finding that there's a correlation of dark chocolate and mental health. So, still watching the portions, that's very important. But dark chocolate is encouraged over milk chocolate for its benefits on mood.
Did that answer your question, Lois?
Sorry.
Oh no, I was responding to
Okay.
the comment and if we answered her question or not. She said, yes, thank you. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? This is a recorded webinar, so if you had to log off, because I know someone logged off, or if you guys just want to share some of these tips with people, I will be posting the recorded version on our YouTube channel, which is Diabetes Atlanta YouTube, and you can access it there in previous sessions that we've covered.
For those who are meal skippers, are there any other tips that those who are not meal skippers can recommend besides the ones I shared?
Um, Waiting to see if someone types. I don't see anything in the chat.
Do any of you identify with any of these eating patterns?
Someone is typing.
Mhm.
You can see the chat, right?
Yes, I can see the
Okay,
chat.
okay, okay.
So
Um,
Vicky said six of them. Which are the two prominent ones that you find that you struggle with? So someone said meal skipper. And what research is finding that most people tend to skip the breakfast meal. And that's the most important meal of the day because that helps regulate blood sugars better throughout the day. So that's why even if you could eat something like I would say maybe break it up into two mini meals. You could do um, like cottage cheese with blueberries, and then when you get to work you could have some I mean sorry oatmeal, and then that way you've got at least three of the food groups in. Um, Someone said nighttime nibblers. Yeah, that's hard, especially when we've had a long day or a very stressful day, and we sit in front of the TV or in front of our phones, and we just sometimes connect food with that. And so you want to look for ways to think about some non-food strategies, keeping our hands busy with either knitting or doing some kind of arts and crafts, or breaking that connection of food with a screen like TV or a phone. Some I had one client who told me that he would brush his teeth and use mouthwash, so then that way he didn't want to go back to eating, and that helped him curb his nighttime nibbling. So these are just some tips, and I hope, Vicky, that will help you with the nighttime nibblers eating pattern. Um, Activities may interfere with meal schedule. So yeah, I when my I'm an empty nester, but when I had children, when I would come from work, I had to take them for soccer or football or whatever. So those activities would delay meals. So you know, what I would say is try to at least eat something light versus eating heavier later on at night, because then it's harder for the body to digest eating later on at night. Plus, it can interfere with sleep. So you just want to have something light before you go out for the activities, so that you're not starving after you return back from the activity. I think the mindless or stress eating that someone said that they struggle with. Um, I usually will say, come up with 10 non food strategies to deal with mindless or stress eating. And I like to listen to music, or I like reading a book. Think about hobbies that you used to enjoy doing before life happened. And so bring back those hobbies. And I say at least write down 10, so that if one doesn't work, at least you've got nine others to choose from. So, journaling can definitely help with recognizing what triggers that, stress eating. Is it a stress that you can get rid of? If you cannot get rid of, then looking for ways to cope with that stress through non food strategies. So, hopefully, that can be something that can be a helpful tip for someone who deals with mindless or stress eating.
Well, if there are no more questions, I feel like we can end it here. We've ended on a good note. Um, Thank you so much, Lois, for joining us, and thank you for the tips. I know I could relate to which one was it? I have to was the one where you eat healthy in public, but you overeat in private. That's one I could relate to
And
personally.
that, yeah, and that's why we just have to be, compassionate towards ourselves. Uh,
Mhm.
it's not something that you do all the time. So, one time when you indulge, you don't want to be so hard on yourself.
Yeah,
So it's more of being compassionate and not be so hard on yourself.
we all make mistakes.
Right. Exactly. It's like when you get to learn, I mean, when you're learning to ride a bike, you fall several times, but then you dust off and you get back on the bike. And that's how you want to, if you had something that you feel guilty, just turn the page and tomorrow is another day. And
That's right.
you just want to be compassionate because no one else will be compassionate on yourself except you.
Yeah, totally agree. But, yes, thank you everyone who joined us. Recorded version will be on our YouTube. Remember, Wow Wednesday is a monthly health and wellness webinar series, and next month we will be having a pharmacist join us. So if you had questions about your medication, any sort of questions, but on that topic, please join us next month, um, the fourth Wednesday. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Registration will be on our website at diabetesatlanta.org. You can also follow our social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's under the same handle, Diabetes Atlanta. Um, and we will be posting updates on when registration will open, what our class will be, and who will be presenting. But thank you, everyone. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Enjoy